Hi, another new video, another 10 interesting choices. Regardless what genre is your favorite, I'm sure you'll find something in it to enjoy. Saint Dragon is a port from the arcades and a title that's very similar to another arcade classic, Dragon Breed. Hard to tell which copied which, as they both came out more or less at the same time, but since both are rather good, it's irrelevant. Saint Dragon's story is as flat as they come, and they're just to provide background to all the shooting that you'll be doing, but what the heck, let's recall it, shall we? So there are these part monsters, part cybernetic beings that have taken over a nondescript galaxy that the game is set in, and they've managed to do what Borg in Star Trek failed to complete, so successfully assimilated all species, turning them into part cybernetic beings. They are strong, powerful, and so deadly in fact that no one can stand against them. Well, no one other than you or one of their own. And as it turned out, that is precisely what happened. Saint Dragon, a cyborg warrior shaped like a dragon neck and a head, gave himself away for you to control so that you could defeat the Scourge of the universe together. And to do so, you will have to traverse through 5 interestingly designed levels, each of them ending with a boss. Or a superstar, because the screen flashes before they emerge so actively that you'd swear that it's the flashes from all the paparazzi taking pictures of them. There are a few different weapons in the game and they're all appropriately deadly, but the star of the show has got to be the dragon's tail that's indestructible and can be used to kill enemies or shield yourself from damage too. So the sooner you master the use of it, the better you will do. Not to say that Saint Dragon is difficult, cause compared to many classics it's not, but honestly, I prefer my shooters on a bit easier side rather than having to repeat levels time after time again. Saint Dragon's presentation is quite nice, sounds fit well on the screen action, and while the backgrounds are a bit empty feeling with a simple black wall behind all the action in the foreground, the sprites are nice and detailed, beautifully animated, and the scrolling is pretty smooth too. If you're into the shoot-em-ups, this one's a must-have. Blazing Thunder is a vertically scrolling shoot-em-up that proves a well-known fact among conspiracy believers that movies have been lying to us all along. For years, we've been shown tanks as these majestic, huge-ass weighing multiple tons machines that cannot be stopped and just go through anything and anyone to get to their target, shooting other as massive as the machines with their gigantic guns. And the truth was right in front of our eyes, if we were only willing to overlook the smoke and mirrors that media served us for decades. The rabbit is out of the hat though, and it's sure as hell not getting back in. So let me enlighten you, my dear viewer, if you still have any doubts about it. Tanks are just a tiny bit bigger than humans, they encompass us tightly and serve as a small mech-like armor vehicle used for combat. Yep, that's how it is. Don't fact-check that, it's gotta be the truth. As a game, however, Blazing Thunder is okay and not a lie. It's not great, but you also won't get bored with it while playing. It's an average game and one worth a playthrough every few years or so. Each of its levels ends with a massive boss fight, with first one being a monstrous tank that you need to defeat by disabling its guns. The regular enemies are mainly oiled up Rambo-like randos without t-shirts either, sporting rifles or bazookas, but some more powerful bodies pop up from time to time too, in the form of tanks, yes, as small as yours, helicopters, planes, mobile rocket launchers, and even armored personal carriers. And the idea here is to push forward, never looking behind, never giving up, giving it your best, never stop, never stopping, and aiming for the moon while hoping for the mountain. Sorry, I must have spent a little too much time on Insta, I feel that my brain's a bit fried. Anyway, believe it or not, but Blazing Thunder has a story. It's not a long or great one, but it's there, and it takes place in the near future of 2059. Zimmerat, which is a name that sounds like a prescription pill for rushes around your privates, is a military supremacy that most likely gained its huge power after one of the newer and more brutal world wars. It rules the planet with an iron fist, or a lead bullet, depending how literal you wanna get about it, and it needs to be stopped for the order and peace to be restored. So a plan is formed to overthrow this terrible entity, and you're the one who drawn a short stick and has to go and do it. I mean, no one else volunteered to draw, so you were kinda doing it against yourself only. So, the rebels literally send you on your own, with no help, no backup, and no one to turn for help. So, knowing no better and not realizing that the mission was set to fail, you go on it and against all odds succeed. Cause you're you, and no other outcome was possible. Lotus Esprit Turbo Challenge may have been an Amiga original, but it doesn't mean that poor C64 Sport was treated like a rogue smelly sock or a chore no one wanted to be a part of. Like something that had to be made just to exist with no attention and care put to it. Nope, it's fantastic, easily one of the best if not the best racer on the system. It features 32 blazing fast tracks spread over 3 difficulty modes and an amazing split-screen multiplayer, something that literally no other C64 racers using the same perspective offered at similar speed and fidelity. And since most games are better with others, so is this one. Don't just trust me though, grab a buddy or a gal and test it out. You'll love it. Despite what it may have sounded like, this section of the video was sponsored by no one. Oh, and no other will either, I have no sponsors. Anyway, there are 15 opponents that you're racing against in single player and you have to finish in the top 8 in each race to progress. It's not especially difficult on the lower difficulties, but the hardest will give you a run for its money. The higher you finish in each race, the lower down the grid your starting position in the next will be. Other than the racers that you speed against, most tracks also have environmental obstacles to avoid, like old slicks, roadworks, boulders or water, and contact with any of these will slow you down. So you gotta drive both, smart and hard. Well, by hard I mean fast, but you know what I mean, right? There are pit stops in many of the races for you to refuel in, and their existence is not a mild suggestion that you should visit. No, you have to. So make sure not to skip them. Lotus's sounds are as good as you could expect them to be in a C64 racer, and the graphics are pretty nice and a definite highlight, especially that they're butter smoothly scaled and animated. Sure, when playing alone it would be better to have a whole screen at your disposal and not just a half, but that's not something unique to C64, that's how Lotus was designed and how it runs on all platforms. So it's not something I could really pick on here. If you love racers and gaming on Commodore's Wonder Machine, then there were hardly any better games for you to indulge yourself in 1990. Midnight Resistance is an excellent title for an adult movie shot in the 70s and also a port of the arcade original, mostly horizontally scrolling shooter. And as ports to 8-bit computers go, it's probably one of the best ever made. And I mean it. For all intents and purposes, it feels a bit like Contra, aka Grisor, but looks much better. Story-wise, because of course there is a story, you're on a very personal mission against extremely evil and large criminal organization, trying to free your kidnapped family from a villain known as King Crimson, a subordinate of Dragon Ball's King Piccolo. There are 2 types of weapons in the game, main ones and backpack ones, and you can replace them both with better options by spending keys that you find on some enemies. Both kinds are limited in ammo, and if it ever runs out, they revert to their basic and unlimited in bullet forms. Enemies come at you at impressive numbers, like hundreds easily, just running in willy-nilly straight to their deaths. I mean, when that 3rd or 4th dozen fell, I think it would be smarter to review your plans as a villain rather than just keep sending them in. But whatever, I've never been a villain, I don't know the responsibility or realize how hard it must be. Each level ends with a boss fight, and these are usually very unique and fun to work out enemies. Well, I say fun, but Midnight Resistance is rather difficult, especially given its arcade roots, and being on top of your game all throughout it is a must. Or otherwise, it won't be as fun. Interestingly enough, C64 got 2 versions of Midnight Resistance, and I don't mean 2 different ports, but 2 versions of the same one. First came in a bundle with night moves and was a cut down only 5 levels long release, which, while still fun, felt a tiny bit lacking. The standalone version contained all 9 arcade levels, and it's the one you should seek out if you intend on playing this gem of a shooter. And you really should, as it's the best example that C64 was technically capable of arcade-perfect experiences despite its hardware limitations, if only devs working on the games knew what they were doing. And you can bet your sweet ass that those working on Midnight Resistance sure did. It was a fun game in the arcades, and it's arguably the best Contra on C64, while not being a Contra at all. If you like shooters, you'll love Midnight Resistance, I've no doubt about that. Rainbow Islands is a place where hopes and dreams go to die when you grow up and clash with reality without fulfilling them before. And there, they are reborn as sweet cutesy bubbly creatures that our 2 protagonists, Bob and Bob, yup, their parents were hella creative, defeat brutally with artificially spawned rainbows on their way to the end levels. While in the same time, you stay at your dead-end job, pondering about what went wrong. Oh wait, I think that's just me. Anyway, the game, believe it or not, is a direct continuation of the story of Bubble Bobble, with Bob and Bob no longer being dinosaurs, but 2 young boys on a mission to defeat the Dark Shadow entity and rescue the Rainbow Islands in the process. The game is split into 10 islands, each with its own team and enemies, and each split into 4 individual stages for a total of 40 fast and frantic arcade levels of pure fun. The gameplay mechanics here are rather simple and opposite to the first game. So instead of going downward slowly and methodically killing enemies, you're racing as fast as you can to the top of each level, trying to outrun raising water, while also killing cute enemies. So at least that's unchanged. You defeat the baddies with magical rainbows that happen to be the only spell out of Harry Potter's universe that you've managed to learn, but being the only one at hand means that you're really good at it. So you can use it both as a weapon or means of traversal, with rainbows being temporary single-serving platforms usable to get to hard-to-reach places. Well, truth be told, rainbows can also be used to collect items, but I've not worked out logic behind it yet, as Harry Potter's original spell did not have that functionality. Maybe it's a 2.0 addition to the Book of Spells, or something that came in a magical Day 1 DLC patch. As you go about your business, however, completing levels like a boss, you will collect various power-ups on your way too. And this can be a speed-up, faster rainbow spawning, increased number of rainbows available at once, flying, invulnerability, and more. Cool stuff really. And if you collect 7 different gems/diamonds on each island, you get an extra life. Now, despite the cartoon-like candy bar colored graphics and excellent sound design, Rainbow Islands is a rather tough cookie to crack. It gets progressively more difficult quite fast when it comes to all level design, enemies and bosses. And by the third island, it can feel a bit punishing. Why push further than you may wonder? Because it's so fun, you won't notice how many times you've failed along the way. Most of the time movie tie-ins were really bad in the late 80s and early 90s, so whenever a new game based on the movie came out, while I did try it out, I never had high hopes going in. So playing Die Hard was actually a pleasant surprise. It's basically the same game as DOS original, loosely following the plot of the movie, albeit remade in a side-scrolling fashion due to system's hardware limitations. To summarize it for those who somehow managed to avoid watching this all-time classic, the game's story is near identical to that of the movie. Sir John McClane, a NYPD detective who's visiting his estranged wife Holly on Christmas Eve at her office Christmas party at the Nakatomi Tower. And everything would be great, drinks would flow and great food would be eaten, if not for the tower unexpectedly being taken over by a group of criminals led by Hans Gruber, seeking to steal $600 million worth of bonds from the bank's vault. From that point onward, both the game and the main action part of the movie starts, where you playing as John have to beat the baddies and save hostages, including your wife Holly. While Die Hard may look like a shooter, it's more of an exploration game with arcade elements, so while you do kill some enemies here and there, search their bodies for extra weapons or ammo, or even a radio to listen to their conversation, the most fun comes from exploring the tower and all of its nooks and crannies. Naturally, many of the rooms are very similar to one another, it's an 8-bit game after all, and some serious technical limitations are a factor here, but quite a few of them are unique, and finding these was always fun. You start the game with just a pistol and 8 bullets, and let me tell you, that's nothing. So the sooner you find better weapons and more ammo, the better. If you enjoyed the movie and all the ventilation shaft crawling, throwing corpses out of the window to attract cops' attention and makeshift bomb making to down a lift that was there, then all of that and more is in the game too. So while Die Hard may not be one-to-one conversion of the source material, it's an excellent tie-in and one well worth experiencing. It's no doubt more than obvious by now, since the footage is running, that Atomix is a top-down viewed timed puzzler. The idea here is simple. In each level you get a set of different atoms and have to arrange them in a particular specific molecule. You recreate the structure by moving the atoms horizontally and vertically around the game board, keeping in mind that they always move as far as it's possible until they reach a wall, obstacle or another atom. The first few levels are rather easy, letting you familiarize yourself with Atomic's simple but addictive mechanics, but soon enough they become rather challenging and will require careful planning to beat, which may prove difficult with the timer relentlessly ticking down. Atomix is composed out of 30 levels, which while not a lot, are plenty enough for a few good evenings filled with damn rights and goddammits when you beat a particularly challenging stage or fail time after time again at it, respectively. Fans of the logic games will no doubt enjoy Atomix, and others should try it out to see if it's their cup of tea. Edd the Duck is an interesting tie-in, as it's a game that was made to follow a British kids TV show. It plays largely like a simplified Rainbow Islands, and it is set in BBC, so British Broadcasting Corporation offices that are themed like real-life areas found around them. So, playing on a weather room, special effects or kids TV sets is nothing out of ordinary. In fact, these are exact quote-unquote worlds that you'll go through, each split into 3 individual stages. Each level is vertically designed and sees you running/jumping towards the top as fast as possible while collecting all the stars along the way, and you need to grab 20 of these to progress. Naturally, the levels are filled with baddies, which while technically impossible to kill, can be temporarily frozen with use of your snowballs that you somehow carry on you in copious amounts. Where do you keep them? Hard to tell, especially that you're a duck with no pants or pockets, but I suppose it's one of those duck secrets that will never unearth or be understood by basic humans such as myself. Anyway, what's your motivation to go through all the levels to complete them other than the steadily raising polluted water, you may wonder? Well, Edd the Duck and Wilson the Butler, who happens to be a sentient hand, are the main characters from that kids TV show I told you about initially, and Edd got his own TV series that completely ignored his and the hand's partnership. Now, because of that turn of events, one of them is feeling abandoned, forgotten, and most importantly angry, so he misplaces said anger and directs it towards Edd, sending all manner of nasties his way. And these are the enemies that you have to avoid while going through the stages. As background stories go, this one's perhaps not the most sophisticated, but it's not terrible either, and plenty enough to give you a reason to complete this maybe a knockoff, but still pretty fun game. For a long time C64 had no good tennis games, and then boom, 1990 came and we had two. International 3D tennis and today's pick, great courts. Both of these have their die-hard fans, and while I definitely played 3D tennis more and preferred it back then, I have to say that objectively speaking, Great Courts was probably a better game. It is played from a semi-3D from behind the player's back perspective and it looks fantastic. While it was nothing special on the Amiga it premiered on C64 it serves as close to real-life representation of the sport as the 8-bit machine can handle. The animations are beautiful, smooth and very lifelike, and all of the rules of the sport are preserved. Shots and serves are based on the position of the aiming cursor, and the controls take a little while to get used to and master. But when you finally do, they will feel very intuitive from then onward. You just have to break through this initial "what the hell is it all about" wall into a realm of "oh, I get it, but of course it all makes sense." And when you do, I suggest trying out higher difficulty modes which remove the cursor or make it invisible actually, having you play based on your muscle memory and skill. So, exactly like you would in real life. Which is not something that can be said about most other tennis games. And I don't only mean on C64. The main gameplay mode here is the tournament, which takes you to either Wimbledon, French, Australian or US Open, and sees you competing as one of 64 tennis players, climbing the ranks with each win. Or dropping with losses, but you're you, and you never lose, so that's a moot point. I know, I've checked with your mother, she said you're the best. If you're a fan of the sport, then there was hardly anything better on C64 and you'll have a lot of fun with this one. Moonshadow is a flick-screen action platformer and a very Metroidvania-like game in its design. A fantasy-set Metroidvania perhaps, but one nonetheless. It takes place on a planet that has two moons, one of which is emanating strong magical forces. It is in fact the only magical barrier that protects the planet from the wrath of a timeless, deadly and bloodthirsty great earth snake creature that is held locked off and secured by that magic in an ancient complex. And since the lunar eclipse is about to onset, the magical power protecting the planets will cease to work when it does, and the monstrosity will be free to leave its captivity and devour the inhabitants of the world. Which, you know, sucks. Someone should have thought about it before, especially that lunar eclipses are a phenomena that happens in a regular and predictable manner, regardless of how rare it might be. So, given how little time is left, a plan is devised. It's not a great one, it's rather risky and with low chances of success, but it's the only one that the medieval minds of the planet were capable of coming up with. So, one person, and in this particular case it's you, is chosen to go into the creature's lair and try to slay it while the barrier still works and the monster is weakened. Now, why is it required for the hero, so once again you, to take off his shirt and oil up before doing so? I do not know. Maybe it's not oil but sunscreen, but it's never explained and he does embark on his quest topless and angry. That second part is less important, though it may be directly related to the first, cause I too would not take kindly to someone sending me on a dangerous mission topless. I'd expect a suit of armor and tons of weapons and not someone to go like, "Nah bro, that t-shirt won't fly, you gotta tackle the beast bare-chested." Anyway, the game is composed out of 150 screens to battle through, filled to the brim with different creatures, all of whom, for some reason, are out to get you. Maybe they work for the Great Earth Snake, or maybe they just wanted to take sight of the one of you less probable to fail. Who knows? The combat is pretty satisfying and relying mainly on many different projectile attacks, and the complex you'll be going through is large, interestingly designed and beautifully realized given how much there is happening on the screen all at once. It's full of traps, simple puzzles and things to find, pick up and discover. Everything about Moonshadow's design is amazing and perfectly made to telegraph C64's true capabilities if left in the hands of talented devs. Everything but the jumping, cause some of those platforms require such a precision to pull some of those daring leaps off that even a single pixel difference left or right may mean making it or repeating the whole set of challenging jumps from the beginning. It can get tedious fast. Well, the difficulty is rather steep too, and with no life so continuous can become a problem for those who are not real joystick assassins. Practice makes perfect though, so if you persevere, you'll learn to appreciate Moonshadow as there is a lot to love here. Overall, presentation is incredible and a healthy mixture of low and high-res assets, making use of C64's full power and at times looking truly stunning. It's a definite recommendation and a gem among gems in Commodore's vast library. Did you like today's games? Did you play any of them? Maybe on platforms other than C64? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, hit those like and subscribe buttons below, and maybe share it too, it helps more than you know. If you didn't, then don't naturally. It was fun talking to you as usual, and I'll see you, or more accurately, talk to you very soon.